Do you have problematic feet, bunions, overlapping toe, hammer toes, corns, maybe plantar fasciitis? Are you wondering if maybe transitioning to a minimal shoe could solve your problems? Have you ever read this book? Born to Run came out in 2009 and it completely captured my imagination. In the book, the author, Christopher McDougall, he profiles the Tarahumara Native American people of northern Mexico who live in a very hilly region, and because of their culture and socioeconomic reasons, they move around a lot. They walk, jog, they run a lot, 10 miles, 15 miles, sometimes even marathon plus distances in a day. That's interesting in and of itself, but what's even more interesting is they do this wearing homemade sandals made from recycled tires and straps. Basically nothing. No Nike Airs, no $300 orthotic inserts, no complex high-tech uppers, and their biomechanics, the way they run, and is great. Their injury rate is really, really low. What Christopher McDougall suggested is maybe all of our high-tech shoes are causing or at least contributing to a lot of our running problems in terms of injuries. And it's a very compelling story. It captured my imagination, millions of readers all around the world, as well as the shoe industry. All these years later, the minimal footwear industry is booming with dozens of different brands and models all over the world, and it's pretty confusing. If you're trying to figure out if minimal shoes are right for you, this video should help. Here's what we'll talk about. What a minimal shoe is, there's 3 qualities. Some of the pitfalls of transitioning, meaning why you probably shouldn't go cold turkey. And lastly, we'll talk about a realistic plan for taking care of your feet, reversing some conditions, but in many cases, just managing. Quick disclaimer, I am not a podiatrist. If you have a serious foot problem, go see a doctor. Second disclaimer, this is not about performance. For the fastest shoe in the world, they actually are high-tech shoes. In fact, they're the opposite of what we'll be talking about here. At the time of this production, the fastest shoe in the world is a Nike Vaporfly. It has carbon fiber rods, an elevated heel, and a very squished up toe. So if you're watching this video, I'll assume that you're interested in health and wellness, health span, and lifespan. In fact, to that end, if you are interested in those topics, I publish once a week. To support my channel and also to get updates about new videos coming out, hit subscribe down below. Let's get into minimal shoes. What are they by definition? There are 3 things to look at. The first thing is the elevation of the heel versus the ball of the foot on the shoe. And this is called the drop. And in a minimal shoe, they have 0 drop, meaning the altitude here is the same as the altitude here. Whereas most sports shoes, all work shoes, all work boots, all high-heeled shoes have an elevated heel. And what this does, this slant, it puffs your chest out, which is a hyper-masculine posture, like a military stance. It makes your butt stick out, which is a hyper-feminized stance, which is trendy right now. It also makes you faster, as we talked about earlier, but the big challenge from a posture perspective is it pitches your pelvis forward. This is called anterior pelvic tilt, and we all have a little bit of it. But the higher the elevation of your heels, the more your pelvis pitches forward. And as you can see, that could potentially put a lot more pressure on your lumbar spine, upstream, and downstream could create knee or foot problems as well. That's the biggest problem with that elevated heel. The second aspect of a minimal shoe is the toe box itself. They call these foot-shaped shoes in that the toe box should be wide enough so that your feet can splay out. In a natural foot, a foot that hasn't been bound up in tight shoes, your feet would be able to splay even wider than the rest of your foot, and a wide toe box shoe, a minimal shoe, is designed to do this. Now, of course, one of the problems is you put your foot in right away and your toes might slide around, but we'll talk about how to address that in just a moment. Now, the last aspect of a minimal shoe is the minimal part. A minimal shoe is designed to be more like a slipper, less like a hiking boot, so as little support as you can get away with. This does 2 main things. The first thing is it forces your foot muscles to get stronger and increases your proprioception, your awareness, and your balance. It also can translate upstream to stronger ankles and lower legs and knees potentially. The second thing it does, maybe even more interesting, is it tends to fix heel striking and force you instead to strike in your midsole, which is better biomechanically, and to increase your stride rate. Good runners run at 180 strides per minute or faster. Poor runners, meaning bad biomechanics, they take big strides, they heel strike, and their rate is a lot slower. Okay, so All of those things sound really great. Why don't we just throw out all of our normal shoes and switch to minimal shoes? Well, here's what happens. When you go from an elevated heel to a zero drop shoe, your body can't respond always so quickly. Your muscles are pretty responsive. They adapt and change pretty quickly. But if we're to look at the connective tissues, ligaments, tendons, cartilage, they'll take many, many months. If you're to look at the bony tissues, they might never change. So sometimes by changing your pelvic angle, sometimes by dropping that heel back down, unfortunately, sometimes you can create the problem you're trying to fix. Back pain, knee, feet problem can sometimes happen. So that's a challenge. When you go into the wide toe box shoe, one of the challenges is your feet slip around. In fact, if you take scrunched up feet and then you put them in that wide toe box, a lot of people feel like the shoe's too big. And so one solution to that is something like these. These are called Awesome Toes. We manufacture these, but there's lots of different models available. And what these do is they spread your feet out more of like a natural shape so that your feet can fill that wide toe box. So you can walk and run with your feet in more of a natural spread. It's not a panacea, but it can really help in the transition to more of a foot-shaped shoe, more of a minimal shoe. Now the last part is highly individual, meaning how much of your shoe is like a slipper and how much is it like a hiking boot. The couple of challenges that come up right away here. If all you're doing is gym training or lifting weights, you can get away with a very minimal shoe. In fact, you'll see really competent lifters lifting in their socks. They'll lift with no shoes at all. But if you're walking or jogging or running any serious distance, you're going to need some type of support. The risk is, of course, things like sprained ankles if you're on trails. But in the more short term, you can bruise up the bones of your feet and potentially do some damage to your metatarsals and some of the small bony tissues in your feet as well. So how much padding you need, I don't know. You need to figure it out and adjust on your own, which kind of leads me into our third and final point. How do you transition? How do you plan to take care of your feet? Remember, we talked about 3 aspects of a minimal shoe. Maybe all 3 are not for you. Maybe you focus on 2 of the 3 or 1.5 of the 3. Transitioning from your traditional footwear to minimal footwear, there is no one-size-fits-all answer. The thing you need to understand is it's usually going to be a 6 to 18-month journey, and it's very likely you'll have some aches and some pains and some growing pains along the way. You might get sore feet. You might manifest knee problems, back problems that you're trying to avoid. The key thing is you pay attention and you back off and modify if you need to. One of the greatest challenges with minimal shoes is they are very expensive and they don't last very long. Because they're less supportive, I find they wear out in about half the time. And for whatever reason, your typical minimal shoe costs just as much as a normal sports shoe, like $150 plus. So it can be a big, frustrating, expensive investment as you figure out your way forward. There are a growing number of transitional shoes. One of the more popular brands right now is called Hoka, H-O-K-A. I don't wear Hoka shoes myself, but part of the reason they're booming in popularity is because they offer a wide toe box, they offer a minimal elevation in that heel, and they do provide a great deal of stability. So I would say of the 3 elements, they have kind of 2.5 plus, and for a lot of people, that's where they'll stay. Stop chasing an ideal, stop trying to be like the Tara Humara, and try to be the best version of yourself that you can be. Once your body has formed, some things we can reverse, many things we just need to learn how to manage. Hope you found this helpful. I'll put a link with some references to different shoes that I've tried and some different shoes that are very popular. I don't have any kind of affiliation or financial incentive. These are just things that I've found helpful. I'll put those in a PDF down below. If you have experience transitioning to minimal shoes, if you have a favorite pair of minimal shoes, I would love to hear what you're wearing and how that has gone for you. Please leave a comment down below. As I mentioned before, I publish science-based health, wellness, yoga videos once a week. Hit subscribe to get updates. You can always find my teaching calendar at yogabody.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.